Hello, everyone. This is Annie, and you're listening to Heroes and Zeros, a true crime podcast. Hello, everyone. I hope you had an awesome Turkey Day, and I know we missed a week of recording, so I apologize, and hope you all had a great Thanksgiving anyway. This story I heard about a year ago or so. My husband and I have always been fascinated with storms, and I hate to say that we love spring and the tornado season that it brings, but we kind of do. We would stand on our covered porch in my hometown of Winterset and watch the clouds just roll in. One time I even saw a funnel cloud about 3 miles away or so. And another odd thing that happened one time, I was sitting on my front porch swing and the sun was shining, and then I heard something that sounded like rainfall. And I looked to my left, which was west, and it was pouring in my next door neighbor's yard, but not mine. My kids were playing basketball in our driveway, and I yelled at them that it was raining in Treva's, which was my neighbor's, yard. They, of course, didn't believe me, so they ran towards the end of the driveway to see, and sure enough, a sheet of rain was coming straight down in the yard just to the west of us. And it didn't last long, but it was memorable. And I know storms are dangerous, and they can be scary. And just last year, some tornadoes in the Winterset, Iowa area killed some families and even destroyed my cousin's house. And it's so scary and so terrifying for these people that went through it. But I've been fascinated with storms since I was a child. If I was forced to come inside because of stomping in mud puddles during a lightning storm wasn't deemed safe by my mother, I would sit on the floor just inside the screen door and close my eyes. I would inhale the smell of the wet earth and be comforted by the rolling booms of thunder. My husband, too, has a fascination with storms and tornadoes. When the movie Twister came out, we were excited every spring to dig it out of our entertainment center and watch it over and over. So my husband Brian is constantly watching YouTube. He's an engineer and just loves to learn new things, constantly craving knowledge of anything and everything. And one of my sisters, Jennifer, is like that as well. So one time, Brian was watching YouTube, and the tornado of Joplin, Missouri caught his attention. But it wasn't just the power of the storm that caught his attention. It was something else, something paranormal, and something one would even say miraculous. Here is the story of Joplin, Missouri. On May 22, 2011, a devastating tornado hit the town of Joplin, Missouri, leveling buildings and killing around 161 people and injuring 1,000. Joplin, with a population of 50,000 or so people, will go down in history for one of the scariest tornado situations in the States, one of the most costly in terms of damages, and then also for something else, something phenomenal and paranormal, almost, that happened during and around this devastating storm. For about half an hour, the tornado grew in strength until it reached an EF5 rating, reaching a maximum width of over 1 mile with winds peaking at more than 200 miles per hour. The tornado destroyed or damaged virtually everything in a 6-mile path. It is said to be the costliest tornado in American history, totaling over $50 billion in damages. During that time, there were about 1,200 tornadoes in the United States, and less than 0.5% are EF5 tornadoes. To those that survived, the children of the families would share stories about humanoid creatures that they nicknamed the Butterfly People. It was on that day that an EF5 tornado destroyed 900 homes and left a landscape behind that resembled a foreign landscape on a barren planet. According to our friend Mr. Wiki, an EF5 tornado is the strongest tornado on the enhanced Fujita scale. An EF5 tornado has wind speeds that equal or are greater than 201 miles per hour, or if you live on the other side of the pond, 322 kilometers per hour. Damage from an EF5 tornado is described as incredible. In the United States, between February 1st, 2007 and 2017, there were 9 confirmed EF5 tornadoes. So back to Joplin. There were children of families that survived, and they would share stories about humanoid creatures that they nicknamed the Butterfly People. Well, while many children share their story, one recurrent element is that they were in the brink of death. The butterfly people manifested before them, protecting them from the falling debris of the tornado. Some have also accredited seeing the butterfly people carry those close to death upwards to the afterlife. One interesting story is about a boy who was trapped inside the tornado and survived. The more interesting part is that he drew a picture of a tornado throwing debris around a red building, not after the storm, but 2 months before it. Many theories have circulated as a result of this phenomenon. Most skeptics believe that the stories are a result of mass hysteria, where stress from the near-death experience would cause people to believe that they are seeing something supernatural before their eyes. This can also explain many other instances of people sharing their stories of supernatural encounters, such as seeing angels during tragedies, such as the destruction of the Twin Towers in the September 11th, 2001 attacks. It should also go without saying that the town exists within the religious belt. As such, the idea of there being a miraculous explanation behind many of the near-death experiences could be explained away as a result of predetermined belief, such as they believe in God, so they believe in angels, that they will just see them. And as most of you know by now that have listened to the podcast, that I probably won't agree with that. But one thing is certain, amidst this terrifying ordeal, something else was happening. Something unbelievable and possibly more important than the tornado itself. In the aftermath of one of the deadliest tornadoes in U.S. history, strange stories began to circulate in Joplin, Missouri. Children that were from a variety of backgrounds reported that angel-like or butterfly people had protected them during the terrible storm which claimed 161 lives. According to the Daily Herald, about one half of the children were counseled at Joplin Child Trauma Treatment Centers set up in the schools afterwards. The clinical director, Danielle Robinson, heard these stories firsthand from many different children. Many of these children stated that they somehow knew these butterfly people were there to calm them and to help keep them safe.
Larry Brothers has heard dozens of those stories.
There's just unusual things that you can't explain. If it was to happen one time, it would be one thing, but when you hear some feel intense amount of peace with everything around them as they were going through, this is amidst the chaos and the damage and destruction. Some of them would have a person mysteriously be there to help them and then be gone.
Some, of course, claim that the children were just mass hallucinating as a stress response. Or perhaps they had manifested their own colorful versions of angels. However, this is complicated by a small number of adults who also saw the butterfly people. I find it interesting that most people in the third world countries report supernatural phenomena like this routinely. And it seems to be mainly in the Western societies that all such reports are viewed with suspicion, a product of the Enlightenment and reliance on the scientific community for the quote-unquote truth. But here's a story for you, and it's Mason's story. Sharon Lillard said that her husband was inside the store when she received a cell phone call from Lage's mother warning of the approaching tornado. She wanted us to go inside, but there wasn't time, said Lillard. So she pulled her grandchildren close to her on the driver's side of the truck with Mason on the floorboard and Lage in the back seat. She turned her back to the truck window. I don't know what happened from there, she says. I could feel stuff hitting my back, she said. They started crying a little bit, and Sharon told them, we've got to pray. And then Sharon said she felt the truck land and hadn't even felt it lifting up. The heavy-duty pickup was thrown from the center of the parking lot into the lawn and garden section of Home Depot, which was completely destroyed.
What's on a Joplin? Notify. Large 3 on the ground doing massive damage.
Sharon Lillard said that Mason answered when she called to her. The iron bar had pierced the truck's roof and thrust through her body. Lage was pinned to the seat of the truck by the crushed roof and suffering a head injury. I told the kids that we have to pray that someone finds us quick, and in no time, they did, she said. Rodney Lillard crawled from the ruins of Home Depot and spotted the truck from its license plate, number 1 Grandpa. Mason cried out to him, "I can't move, Papa. I think I broke my ribs." Reeves' rescue crew quickly showed up and cut the iron rod before transporting Mason to the hospital. First they tried with just a regular saw, and then they got an electric one, said the grandmother. She said that she could feel the vibrations, but she didn't cry. Lage was also taken to Freeman Hospital, where he underwent 6 hours of brain surgery. He was later moved to Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City, where his mother said he's improving, but will be hospitalized for several weeks. Mason's mother, Michelle Workman, said that she was not surprised at her daughter's calm demeanor despite the iron rod that was through her body. "She's always been a very laid-back and matter-of-fact about things," said Workman, "and she's doing well in therapy. To see her today, knowing where she was 4 weeks ago, I'll take it."
I've already had 11 surgeries, though. It broke 7 ribs, punctured my lower lung, and came out my back.
Mason called the experience kind of scary a little bit, but she was calmed by angels that she saw near herself and her cousin. When her grandmother told them to pray, she said she saw angels protecting them. And quote, "I think God has big plans for her," said Sharon Lillard. Lage Grisby was believed to be near death when he arrived at Freeman Hospital West after being pulled from debris in the May 22, 2011 tornado. In fact, he was taken to the hospital's morgue. Despite critical injuries suffered when their grandparents' truck was thrown more than 300 feet across the Home Depot parking lot, the two cousins say that they don't think that often about their EF5 twister that leveled about 1/3 of their town of Joplin. "You kind of forget about it unless you just look at the scars," said Mason. And Lage, who is now 19, and Mason, who is 15, have plenty of experience there. After suffering life-threatening head injuries when he was ejected from the truck, Lage was at first taken to a morgue at the hospital. On the night of the tornado, Mason was rushed to surgery, but Lage had been black-tagged, meaning he was thought to be dying. That night, Freeman Hospital West ER nurse Tracy Dye arrived at the hospital after she heard the tornado had hit St. John's Regional Medical Center. She had considered not going to work because she was watching the storm develop and didn't want to leave her sons. But she did go, a decision that made a life-or-death impact. When Dye arrived at the hospital, she was sent to the morgue, and walking through, she touched Lage's arm, and he let out a scream. She ran and got a doctor, and they got them out of there. The nurse and a former patient, who are now fast friends, recalled their experiences from that night in a conversation Wednesday at Freeman. Dye stayed with him until surgery, which lasted 6 hours. For him, those actions were life-saving. Lage remembered the nurse Wednesday. "I owe you my life," he said to her. And Dye said Lage and his family feel indebted, even though they're not. "He's done the biggest job in how far he's come in recovery," end quote, from Nurse Dye. Lage says that he calls the nurse his second mom, and Dye responds that out of the tragedy, Lage's family has become her extended family. She and her husband and children attended his graduation party a year ago, and the two check up on each other in telephone calls or via text. "We don't talk about the tornado," she says. "I get updates from him and make sure that he's okay. But we don't talk about the past. We talk about the future." Many young survivors described butterfly people, they said, protected them during the tornado. Mason, who's grown up attending church, said that there's no mistaking what she saw. Angels were alongside her cousin. Their grandmother had urged them to pray as the storm approached. She saw them just before the storm hit, Mason said, and after she felt a touch on her shoulder. She says, "I thought it was Lage, but when I turned, I saw 2 angels in robes, one with brown hair and one with blonde hair," she said. "It was kind of calming. I knew God was with us and that He'd take us to be with Him or just leave us to do something great." Mason and Lage and their families were guests on Thursday when Freeman officials unveiled a butterfly sculpture at the hospital. Raymond Vetch, the surgeon who worked 2 hours to remove the rod from Mason's body, paid tribute to her bravery and to the courage and the hard work of the hospital staff that night. A news story by Todd C. Frankel of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch was published in mid-December. Frankel's intriguing story describes a mother and a preschool-aged daughter who ran from their car as the twister closed in on them. Together they fell to the ground, and the mother tried her best to cover her daughter. The mother watched the tornado send their car flying in their direction and then braced for the result. But it never came, and both emerged unharmed. Afterwards, the daughter asked her mother if her mother thought that they were pretty. Her mom asked who was pretty. The little girl responded by asking if her mother had also seen the butterfly people. In another version of the story, the reporter writes, the daughter describes seeing the butterfly people lifting men and women into the sky. Yet another account concerns a man and 2 young boys. They also supposedly were trapped outside during the tornado. In most retellings, the wind was powerful enough to rip the soles from the man's shoes, but no one was injured. Frankel writes that these preschool-age boys said that they saw butterfly people protecting them from above. So needless to say, this city was in chaos, and the EF5 tornado was wreaking havoc on everyone. It didn't matter what faith you were, Christian, Buddhist, agnostic, atheist. Inside these homes, people were trapped and scared, and butterfly people were there for them, faithless or not. Now, I'm a Christian, so I believe that those were angels, and there is power in prayer. And because it was in the Bible Belt, there were very, very many people praying. There's even more power in prayer when people are gathered together and all praying for the same thing. Protection from the tornado in Joplin, Missouri is one of the things that they were praying for. Another story is one woman was arriving home with her children, rushing them all inside. Together they sheltered inside a small closet, and the family started praying when suddenly the full force of the F5 tornado was upon them, and they started ripping their home to shreds. Inside the fury of wind and hail, the family thought that it was the end. The winds were so fierce, even the daughter's glasses shattered as the roof was ripped off above them. Then strangely, the son saw something in the sky. Amidst the pain and anguish, there was something above them, amongst the winds. A white woman with wings was hovering over them, as if she was protecting them from harm. Had madness set in? Was it a religious vision? As the days would unfold, hundreds and hundreds of people would come forward, all describing the exact same vision, down to the last detail. Just what had people seen in Joplin on the fateful May day? Believers of the unnatural phenomenon believe that the butterfly people are in truth angels, but because the children were still developing, many believe that they instead perceived them as butterfly people because they couldn't visualize what they would perceive an angel to be. Prior to the tornado, a mural artist visited the town to start a new project. After the storm, he went to a town meeting to find some volunteers. Thousands of volunteers offered to lend a hand, a majority of them being children who drew several pictures depicting the butterfly people. Despite some skepticism, the artist saw that the butterfly people represented a rebirth of sorts to the town. They were described as colorful and pretty, so children called them butterfly people. Most of these stories had common elements. The tornado hit their home, often parents were praying, the roof was ripped off, children saw a butterfly person descending down from the sky and covering them with wings. Those particular children usually emerged from the wreckage in good condition. The son in the original tale described what he saw as a butterfly woman, who stayed and stayed, protecting the family from harm. Moreover, the rest of the family also saw the vision. As the tornado passed by, the family was left unharmed. In fact, when they came out of the closet, it was the only thing left in the house without damage. The entire rest of the house, everything, was destroyed, yet that humble closet with no additional protection to the rest of the house survived. All this served to reinforce the belief for the family that an angel had protected them on that day. Another version states that children saw butterfly people carrying other kids and adults up into the heavens, the ones who didn't make it out alive, presumably their souls. Medical aid soon arrived, and the search began for the injured and the trapped, and rumors began to circulate amongst the crowds. One nurse, looking rather confused, told the family that she saw an angel, and when pressed, she described the exact same vision that the family had seen, down to the last detail. The nurse said that the butterfly woman was larger than the average human, but she had wings. And she wasn't sure what to make of it, what she saw, but she didn't fear it. She said she saw it whilst tending to a man who had been impaled on a wooden stake. She knew he was dying, and then she saw it. Something standing nearby, as if it was comforting the man. If this was a religious vision of the dying, then why did the nurse see it? And it wasn't the only one. Rather than some strange being protecting the town, the nurse said that she saw many. Not a butterfly woman, but butterfly people. Over the following weeks, counselors spoke to dozens and dozens of traumatized children across the town, none of whom even knew each other, and every single one spoke of the butterfly people, how they saved them on that day. And time again, the descriptions matched. Joplin was no longer just the scene of a tragedy, no longer just a war zone steeped in loss in billions of dollars worth of damage. It was now also home to something strange, something unexplainable. About one half of the children were counseled at Joplin Child Trauma Treatment Center that was set up in schools afterwards. The clinical director, Danielle Robinson, heard these stories firsthand from many different children.
Thought I was going to die when I was flying around inside the tornado.
And many of these children stated that they somehow knew that these butterfly people were there to calm them and to help keep them safe. When the seconds passed by, turned into minutes, she opened her eyes and the car was nowhere to be seen. "What happened?" she asked her daughter. "Didn't you see the butterfly people, Mommy?" Her daughter was sure that the butterfly people were carrying humans through the sky. They were beautiful, the little girl said, smiling. They were taking people to heaven. Yet another account concerns a man and two young boys. They were trapped outside during the tornado, and in most retellings, the wind was powerful enough that it ripped the soles from the man's shoes. But no one was injured. Frankel writes that these preschool-age boys that were with the man said that they saw butterfly people protecting them from above.
God has his hand on people, and he had his hand on Joplin.
Frankel writes that these preschool-age boys that were with the man said that they saw butterfly people protecting them from above. High school counselor Shelley Wilson heard the story of the mother and her daughter. After the tornado, she volunteered for a Red Cross disaster mental health team. Wilson doesn't remember who told her stories about children seeing the butterfly people, but Frankel writes she heard them repeatedly, yet never firsthand. But that didn't lead Wilson to doubt, the story continues. It's the only way we can really honestly understand how more people were not killed, she said. When you walked through what was left, it just kind of took your breath away, she said. Marcia Sherrod heard the story while volunteering at a tornado donation center, Frankel writes. She shared it with her Sunday school class, and one boy, who was a quiet 11-year-old, raised his hand. The boy said that he saw the butterfly people that night too, Sherrod recalled. She believes angels were indeed active as the tornado began grinding its mile-wide path through the town. If you had seen what I saw, she told the reporter, you would understand. Emily Huddleston, who was 14 on that fateful day, May 22nd, says that she understands completely. She was traveling with her mother across town when the tornado lifted their vehicle and sent it soaring hundreds of yards through the air. Emily's leg was impaled in the resulting crash, and she spent weeks in treatment and healing. During the ensuing months, as she walked through the barren landscape that had been her home and her neighborhood, Emily said she noticed that butterflies, seemingly from out of nowhere, were continually either landing on her or circling her.
No reason for any butterfly to even be around here, and a butterfly came and landed on me.
Weeks earlier, Emily's leg was ripped open when the wind tossed her family's SUV into the air.
That's where I was sitting.
She didn't see butterfly people or angels during the storm, but something did happen to her.
I remember a hand touching on my left shoulder, and a voice told me, everything's going to be okay.
Do you believe the story?
Yes, I do.
Floating through the air.
In a video on the internet, she explains with tears streaming, there was no logical reason for the butterflies to even be there. No bushes, no trees, or anything naturally that would attract them. For her, she says, those butterflies are a sign that angels are still here and watching over us. They're not leaving, she says. Some therapists who visited with many Joplin children likely would say the protective butterfly people are a natural way of trying to comprehend such a disaster in understandable terms. Like most folks, I'm at a loss where the truth lies in this story, says the therapist. In Joplin today, there is a mural titled Butterfly Effect. Dreams Take Flight covers one wall of the Dixie Printing Building at 15th and Main Street. The colorful work, which was primarily crafted by muralist Dave Lowenstein, with contributions by children in Joplin, presents a story of rebirth and hope renewed. And while Lowenstein says that the stories of the butterfly people weren't necessarily the inspiration for the mural, you can't help but notice the bright one fluttering in the crowd and that small, winged person flying and watching from above. Sharon Lillard calls Di their angel, adding that she was at the hospital the other day and dropped a little gift by for her. The Lillard and Grigsby families also have developed friendships with members of the Quapaw Tribal Fire Department. It's relatively rare that firefighters and rescue workers get a thanks for their work, he said, but those are great kids from a great family. Francisco said that he and others who responded will never forget the images of that night, or the two cousins who were so gravely injured. To see them now and to think back to the way they were, it's a miracle, he said. Mason and Lage agree. Quote, God really blessed us. He's not done with us, end quote, said Lage. Mason had her final surgery 2 years ago to correct scoliosis that had developed as a result of her injuries. And they put 2 rods along her spine with 27 screws and clips on her ribs. She said she grew 2 inches after that, but 13 surgeries in 3 years is too many. She's now a cheerleader at Jasper High School and a member of the softball team. She lives with her grandparents and looks forward to spending her summer jumping on the trampoline and riding her horse. She has her learner's permit and can't wait to start driving on her own. Lage's injuries are more persistent. He wears a brace on his right leg and has limited use of his right arm. But that doesn't keep him from doing most anything he wants, including driving and working on vehicles and chores like replacing the rear end on his friend's truck just last week. He graduated from Webb City High School a year ago. He plays video games one-handed and somehow he still beats her, said Mason. They said that he would never walk or never talk again, and he proved them wrong. When it comes to cars and trucks, he can just do about anything, said his grandfather, Rodney Lillard. After surgeries and treatment at Freeman Hospital, the two were transferred to Children's Mercy Hospital. Lage spent 6 weeks at the Kansas City Hospital and then returned later for a surgery to implant a piece of his skull that had been temporarily stored in his stomach. Wow. I don't even know what that means. He underwent months of therapy, and he still gets Botox injections in his hand and his leg every 6 months to relax some muscles and to tighten others. We're amazed at everything he can do, said his grandmother, Sharon Lillard. Though in the truck with her 2 grandchildren, Sharon Lillard was cut and bruised but did not suffer serious injuries. 5 years later, pieces of wood that were driven into her skin by the tornado still worked to the surface from time to time. I can't imagine that because I just recently had a splinter in my thumb that was probably 1/16 of an inch. I think it was a piece of Christmas tree that what are they called? Whatever. I just got a little piece in my thumb. And I had to just kind of tear my skin this morning just to rip it off because it would wake me up. I could feel it. So I can't imagine having pieces of wood that are in my body that for years just work themselves up to the surface. 8 people died in the Home Depot store. Sharon Lillard said that the family still shops frequently at Home Depot and visits with workers who remember the night of the tornado. They showed us their safe room, she said. Though both youngsters used to be traumatized by storms, they no longer bother Lage, he said. Mason said she used to freak out, but now when a storm approaches, she goes to an interior room of the house, puts on headphones to block out any thunder. The tornado has been an opportunity to witness to others about their faith, Sharon Lillard said. Family members have spoken many times at local churches and other gatherings, and Mason sings, and she has a wonderful voice, Sharon Lillard said. We trust God to take care of our needs, and He's always there, she says. Paula Baker, which was the Freeman Health System CEO, says the hospital workers had to help some patients find housing when they were ready for discharge. Not only had they been injured in the May 2011 tornado, but they had also lost their homes. Many in the immediate aftermath of the tornado described the devastation in such a way that they do not know how any survived the slam of an EF5, 200-mile-per-hour wall of destruction. Yet tale after tale of survival has emerged over the last year, many only with the word miracle as the explanation for their having survived. The story of a couple hiding in a bathroom with a mattress over them and their 4 children when the house exploded and blew them all outside. After the storm passed, the entire family was accounted for except for 5-year-old Eli, who later was found wrapped in a carpet like a burrito unharmed and carried some 20 feet away. The children's stories recount tales of butterfly wings ferrying them to safety as the cars that they were riding in flew frantically through the air, or the story of a 4-year-old boy who was found in a field 6 miles from his home unharmed, who told the deputy an angel had a hold of him and just set him down there. Still, there are those who don't believe in angels. Even many of those are less skeptical after a sea of volunteers in orange t-shirts bearing the Samaritan's Purse logo descended upon Joplin like angels of an earthly variety. While the children, even those with knowledge of guardian angels, whisper their stories in such a way that there is no room for disbelief. The people of Joplin saw something, and regardless of the truth, it brought them comfort and hope when they needed it. And it's easy to see why. Joplin is at the center of America's religious heartland, and we know that near-death experiences often result in visions and experiences that are beyond human understanding. So take a look at the 1978 Freiburg mine disaster. Or maybe it's Freiburg, F-R-E-I-B-E-R-G. So I think it's Freiburg. Anyway, it was a mining disaster. All the miners, every one of them, saw a man standing in front of the mine in Freiburg, Germany. While the workers approached the man, they discovered huge wings were covering his body. They stood in shock for a moment when suddenly the angel let out a series of shrieks described as similar to a train's emergency brakes. The miners fled, and around 1 hour later, the mine exploded. A huge plume of smoke covered Freiburg. For many of the miners, what they saw was an angel warning them of the danger. If they hadn't fled, they'd all be dead after all. The same thing happened in 1986 in Chernobyl. Dozens and dozens of people saw winged creatures, which many were described as angels, that were hovering above the land moments before the disaster, leading many to believe that these angels were a sign that a horrific event was coming. If you recall, I did an episode of the Mothman, and I wonder if a couple of these instances are attributed to him. Even as recently as 2001, many people claim to have seen winged creatures around the Twin Towers shortly before the disaster. And whether you want to believe in angels or not doesn't really matter. What matters most is that people often see something before tragedy strikes, often something beyond any kind of natural explanation or rational explanation. Could this be the explanation of Joplin's butterfly people? Most believe so. Deep in the religious heartland, a people of great faith see an angel before they think they're about to die. And it does happen, quite a lot in fact. Near-death experiences often sound strange to those of us who haven't had them. The one hole in this theory is that they didn't say angels. Only a few did, but most people who saw the butterfly people of Joplin described what they saw as butterfly people, and not angels. Of course, many of those people were children. Maybe the simple answer is that children have a better idea of what a butterfly is than an angel. Is it mass hysteria? Or could it be the brain doing what it does best in times of crisis? Showing you what you need to see to bring you the most comfort. When something unbelievable and unexplainable happens, we need to share it. Because more than likely, we are not alone in our experience. And if you have faith or not, that there even is a God, a higher power, even skeptics are forced to acknowledge that strange things happen. And faith, of course, is your choice. I myself feel like I have always had faith, but when I had my spiritual encounters with the paranormal and ghosts and those very strange experiences, it most definitely boosted my faith, because if it's possible for all these weird, strange, ghostly things to happen, then what else is possible? And it is my job to tell you my story. And as you guys know, I'm a girl who believes in God and Jesus Christ, and I'm Christian, but I'm also one big fat hopeless sinner, because I'm not perfect and I don't pretend to be. But there is some crazy shit out there, and I for one believe that God has my back, and I would rather look like a fool to unbelievers than to be wrong. I've told you my story, and I will continue to do so and tell you the stories of others. And you can form your own conclusion, but do it before it's too late. Thanks for listening, everyone. Take care, and God bless. Thanks for listening, everyone. Please subscribe and share. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.